But I just want to ask you one question before I forget. What would you say, QT, is the biggest or maybe one or two biggest misconceptions about AEW?
That the inmates run the asylum,
right?
Like fully, right? And I'll explain that. So that's one thing.
Right.
And then two, again, I think it's that I'm just trying to think of what I hear all the time.
Right. Or you read or whatever.
Or I read, yeah. I mean...
Well, he's humored by the negative comments like I am. He doesn't bother.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing, like I said, the biggest thing is...
but if it's a misconception, he has a chance to rectify.
Yeah, I mean, the inmates running the asylum thing, right? Like, okay, so there's talents that definitely talk to Tony. And they've earned that right to speak to him. Also, there's talents that probably haven't, in my opinion, earned the right to talk to Tony. But his open door policy is almost too open, right? But he'll listen to them and he'll, sympathize with them and empathize, and then he'll make the best decision for the show. But ideally, because again, I think a lot of talents look in the mirror and see what they could be later on, right? Like, I think I could be The Rock, right? And I'm just using that as an example.
Right.
But I should start by being whatever the fan sees first. And then once we're on the same page, we can take them on whatever ride we want, right? Like, and I only learned that not too long ago from someone else, but it's true, right? Like, I look at myself and think, man, I could probably be a top guy. I might be able to, but as of right now, I'm this guy that is friends of Cody and blah, blah, blah. Like, let's start there and kind of move on. But I think when it goes to the inmates running the asylum, like they do have some, say when they come up with stuff, but it's not always going to just say yes. Right. Like even all the way to Chris Jericho, like he'll say something and Tony will say like, well, no, we're not going to do that because this is going on in X, Y, and Z. And Chris will say, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Or he's going to try to fight it. And when I say fight it, I mean, I always say fight, but in the sense of, I know we should always try to fight a battle every time you're at work. Right. And this way you never go home unhappy. At least you tried. And there's a lot of talents that don't try and they're just worried. And then they probably are the ones that go to the dirt sheets and say X person gets whatever they want. Like MJF writes his own stuff with Tony. It's like MJF probably does talk to Tony a lot about his stuff, but also like he produces and he does really well. And the moment he doesn't, I'm sure he's going to lose all of that. Cause I've seen that happen too, where a talent tries to do their stuff and it doesn't work.
How funny is this, QT? So I'm sure you were there when this happened, but you weren't in Las Vegas. So the first time I ever appeared in AEW, Chris invited me to come out of limousine and there was like a lot of smoke, or smoke.
Right? Oh, yeah. For the hangover thing when they were doing the Inner Circle stuff, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I remember when I came back and I was telling Disco, I was putting over Chris because he's always been a smart guy, even in WCW, right? And he was producing basically the whole thing.
Sure.
But there was one guy and this is before MJF ever even made it big. I said there was one guy, and I knew MJF from MLW, so I already knew how talented he was.
Yeah.
But I said there was one guy that was soaking up everything like a sponge, was listening, was giving, and it was QT, and MJF, right? And I also think that, MJF can't just go on TV and do whatever he wants without Tony saying okay, but he kind of got himself over, by himself in a way.
Sure.
So why would you fix something if it isn't broken? If this guy was able to produce himself and come up with his gimmick and his catchphrases and all that, so you give him latitude.
Correct. And I think it's a matter of, even when I did my program with Paul White, which was a very low priority program, right? It was me and Paul. We were just going to get to the pay-per-view. He wanted to have his first match on a pay-per-view. And I feel like he's earned that right as being Paul White. But it was me that he was in there with, and we're here to here, right? So, but even then it was like, hey, Paul, let's sit down. Let's try to come up with a reason for having this match. Let's try to create a story out of it. And then I'm going to go to Tony and I'm going to show him what we come up with. And then it's really a matter of, okay, do we have the TV time to do this? Because I do have to, there's a structure to wrestling, right? And as much as it hurts to hear it sometimes, yeah, MJF will get more TV time than I'm going to get. And sometimes people don't understand that and they get upset. And it's like, again, I like having the job of letting them know, like, hey, then get over more than that person. And then you could do whatever, all those things. But even that storyline was, again, Tony saying, hey, I don't think we could do that in ring. We might have to do it backstage and it only could be this long, but I'll let you guys do your stuff, but let's work on it together now that I have a basic outline. Because again, that's what I love about AEW, honestly. Like, as much as people are going to say, oh, it's we don't have the 50 writers that all have their own, hey, I have this 5 talents, you have these 5 talents. So you do kind of have to come up with some of your own stuff. And again, the hardest part about getting your stuff on TV is the fact that most people are too scared to ask. Like, just ask. Like, the worst that's going to happen. And
there's not a lot of alpha males in wrestling anymore like there used to be.
No, I mean, an MJF is an alpha male. He will, he's very, hey, and I'm not mad at him for it. We all should be, because at the end of the day, like I said,
you have to be, bro.
What's the worst that's going to happen? He's going to say no.
You get walked over and you get looked over. Disco's been with me a long time, in Impact, and we did European trips together and WCW. He knows how I was. If they weren't doing nothing with me, I was like, why aren't you doing anything with me? And if you tell me you don't have an idea, I have an idea.
Correct.
And I always had work.
That's the thing. If you so MJF, I use him as an example just because.
Yeah.
1, he's proven himself, and 2, he is nonstop calling me, pitching stuff, coming up with ideas, trying to figure out if I know about person X being in a storyline already because he has an idea to do something. Like, again, he's going to go to Tony, but I'm kind of filtering to kind of let him know so this way he doesn't waste his time. You know what I mean? But like, at the end of the day, if you could do that, if you have the option of going to the boss, like, how many people would have loved to go right now to Triple H and be able to pitch all their stuff? And if he has that kind of policy with them, why wouldn't you do that? I mean, that's absurd to not ask, because worse is going to happen.
That's the guy that makes the decisions.
Yeah, they're going to say no. And then once they say no, you ask them why. Like, okay, not in a sense of like why. It's more or less, okay, so why is there an objection? Oh, well, that person is going to be doing blah, blah, blah. Oh, okay, so it's the person. So I just got to find a different person then. Yes. Or sometimes it's, hey, it could be, hey, I don't see you in that role. I just don't see you winning the world title. Like, that's okay. But how can I get there then? And then it's a matter of, well, you got to do this. And unfortunately, because it's not, I don't want to say it's not real, but it's not real. It's not like baseball where if I hit 50 home runs, I'm on the team and I'm starting.
Right.
So you just have to figure out, and believe it or not, John Cena was at the school because of Cody, and he was talking to the kids. And we went in the office and he was talking to Cody about some stuff. And he asked me like, hey, I know you work for the other company, but like, is there anything I could, answer for you? And I was like, yeah, I'm just a little, like, I'm a VP. But also, like, of course I want to wrestle. And he just said, just ask your boss what he wants. And if you give him what he wants, there's nothing you can worry about because you're doing what he asked you to do. And if it's something that you genuinely feel strongly about, that you don't want to do it or you have another idea, then do it. Just know that you're on the hook, right? And if it doesn't work, you're on the hook. And some people just have, and like I said, I mean, it really makes sense in the sense of, I know when I want something from my wife, I just got to give her what she wants first, right? Like, life isn't that hard. It's just when you sit there and you're not talking to anyone because you're introverted and you're going through your own head about all these things that I think they're mad at me and I think this, and it's like, well, just ask them.
Yo, what's up? I just want to thank you guys for watching this clip. Don't forget to hit the like button, leave a comment, and subscribe, and join our YouTube membership for hours and hours of exclusive, unedited, uncensored content. And being a member will help you get involved in our upcoming live streams. Thank you for your support. Thank you for riding with us. I know you got a lot of other podcast choices, be it wrestling or other ones. And thank you for picking us. Boom.